So welcome to Bodhicitta Dakini Monastery. So in Zen, there are the four great vows of bodhisattvas, which are: beings are vast, I vow to save them. Delusions are countless, I vow to cut them off. The Dharma gates are endless or boundless, I vow to master them. And the Buddha's way is hard to attain, I vow to attain it. So this, like if someone said, what's Buddhism in a nutshell? These are a beautiful way to sum up the teachings, because all the teachings can be contained in them. And when someone once said, what is the Buddha's teaching in a nutshell? Another saying was, do no unwholesome deeds, collect a great store of merit, purify your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So beings are vast, we vow to save them. So I guess from a Western point of view, people would be like, isn't that a bit codependent? Can we really save others? We can barely save ourselves. But Buddhism takes a long-term view of sacred interbeing, sacred interconnectedness. And Abrahamic religions, they view time as a line, alpha, omega, beginning, end. Whereas most Eastern religions view time and life as a circle, no beginning, no end. In Buddhism, there is no God or soul or truly permanently existing self. There is a self which arises due to dependent origination causes and conditions. And because it's like no beginning, no end, you split, like my non-self elements. If I look at my non-self elements, my parents, culture, my ancestors, the country I was born in, the history of the country I was born in, the sun, the rain, the clouds, the earth. Without these things, I cannot exist. And then you split you're looking for this me in these non-self elements, and you keep splitting and splitting and splitting, and in the end, you can't even find the beginning of that, You break it down, you break it down, you break it down, but it's always finer and finer threads, in this infinite web of interbeing. Not to say that we're one, but we are intimately interconnected. So when we say beings are vast, I vow to save them, that's taking a really long-term view that if we live with peace and compassion, and if we attain awakening, that has an impact on others. And even the way we choose to live now, like what we choose to buy, what we, politicians we choose to support, the way we interact with each other has a flow-on effect. It definitely does. And we know so much of how we are now is a result of early childhood bonding with our parents or carer, and how we repeat that relationship again and again later in life, whether it's, a well-adjusted attachment style, an avoidant attachment style, an anxious attachment style. We seek what we, either we seek to repeat what we found nurturing, or we seek to repeat dysfunctional patterns, and to try and, because trauma happens in relationship, we often, if we haven't resolved something, we seek to play it out again to try and resolve it, which is really interesting. In the West, Buddhism is taught in kind of a silo, like it's just me and my practice and my teacher, but that's actually never the way Buddhism was taught or viewed in its history. Buddhism has always been taught in the context of the fourfold community: monks, nuns, householder yogis, and yoginis. And people never just practiced, like, even if it was a small temple, it wasn't just for them, it was for all beings, and it was to preserve the Dharma and benefit others and contribute something good to society, And even if someone is sitting alone no one else comes, that's still a little bit more peace in the world. That's still an hour where they're not doing something unwholesome. That's still someone seeking awakening, and that definitely has effects. Like if you go to a place, it's interesting, sometimes children pick up on the energy of a place. Like if people have just been fighting, the children start to get really rowdy. They can sense the energy. Animals are the same. So or if something's happened in a place, like there was a genocide or violence, sometimes it carries on. So absolutely, we can affect each other. Although I may not be responsible for other people's thoughts or feelings, and I can't control that, I can definitely have a positive or a negative impact on the world. And we don't live in a silo. We don't live in a vacuum. We exist as relational beings, right? So the attitude of Buddhism is do no harm, and if you can give benefit, give benefit. And everybody has been our mother, the mothers of this life, or mother-like figures, or father-like figures. But the mothers of past lives, their tears they've cried for us would fill the oceans of the world, the bodies that they've given up protecting us. Because even animals protect, like a little tiny bird, even those really not so smart turbo chooks down in the Deloraine Park would die to protect their young. Like a bird with a brain this big would die to protect its young. So the bodies our mothers have given up protecting us the bones would fill the ocean, be higher than the mountains of the world. And even if you don't believe in, past lives, you can see that everything we have comes from others. You can see it in this life, that without farmers we don't live, without people who make our clothes to keep us warm in winter. We often don't think about that. Like we'll see some suffering on the news. We'll hear, dodgy built factory in Bangladesh burns down, and we'll think that's not related to me. But it's really 6 degrees of separation, because you just look at your Patagonia fleece. Where is it made, right? And because they were trying to get a bigger profit margin, that factory wasn't constructed safely, and there's underage girls working there, crowded in. So we're already part of that, we're like literally one purchase away from being part of that. Yeah. So yeah, beings are vast. I vow to save them, or at least vow to, and that's where the Bodhisattva path comes in, where the wish to liberate all beings as well as yourself from suffering. And that attitude of bodhicitta and compassion is what differentiates Mahayana Buddhism from Theravada. Not to say that Theravadins don't have a lot of compassion, like they have metta, they wish all beings to be well. That just in the Metta Sutta, the Buddha said, just as a mother loves her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world. And they have the 4 Brahma Viharas, which is the wish, loving kindness, the wish that others be well and happy, compassion, the wish that they be free of suffering, rejoicing in others' happiness, like you have something good, that's wonderful, sadhu, you've done some good deeds, I'm so happy for you, you found love, that's wonderful. In the West, like it's like you got that good job, you got a raise, you found someone nice, but actually rejoicing is a much more wholesome, and like when you resent people, it makes you unhappy. So rather than having resentment, it's better to try and create causes and conditions for good things to happen in your life, instead of being resentful of others' success or happiness. And then equanimity, which is a really important part of love and compassion, because without equanimity, we have big expectations for what, it's like, well, I did this for you, so you should do what I say. Like sometimes people do helping others with an agenda. That happens with the World Bank a lot, like we gave you a loan for this development, so now you need to give us your cobalt or your coal at a cheaper price, you know, and then these people are roped into loans they can never repay, and then they have to vote at the UN like it's all rigged, you know. So equanimity is like helping others without an agenda, you know, and not that I'm this so-called nice person helping this unfortunate lowly person, you know, but standing together because we all move in circles. Like I have been the person with nothing, and I have also been the person with everything, and it is because we are essentially the same, and we both know what suffering is, that we would try to, you know, empower each other and work together for the common good, not because one is more, you know, worthy or kind of together. Yeah, like making people feel wretched when you help them is kind of a failure of compassion. To make, you know, to disrespect someone, to make them feel a burden or unworthy, it's a failure of compassion. That happens a bit with the church. Like I just remember when I was a homeless teenager, I remember going to Vinnie's and being given a food bag, and it was white bread and a tin of something, and I didn't have a can opener, and I wouldn't eat the white bread. So whatever I was receiving was completely useless for me. It wasn't in consultation with me, and that happens a lot with Indigenous people. Like they give them housing, but they don't ask how does your mob live, you know, how big is your family. They give them a 2-bedroom house and they got 10 people, you know, or they don't consult them about design, like how do you live. Indigenous people like to live outdoors a lot, so they need open spaces to nature, you know, so that then they're not happy with the house, so they'll take out a few floorboards because they want to be closer to the earth, or they need, you know, that they need a bigger space because they have a bigger family, right? So consultation and not making that person, not imposing what you think they need, but rather being humble enough to spend time with them and find out from their side how their culture is and what they need is really important. Yeah, not making someone feel wretched or less than for the help they receive, but rather as an extension of human goodness and solidarity and justice, because justice is how love looks in public. Yeah, so bodhicitta is a natural response to understanding everybody is interconnected. Yeah, so we can't have a secure society if you know, half the population can't afford rent. They're gonna start protesting. They're gonna turn to crime. They're gonna be in pain. They might turn to drugs. Like all the problems we have in society, the opioid crisis and the housing affordability, it all creates instability. And when it on the far extreme of instability, things like kidnapping, gangs, you know, it all starts to happen when there is a huge gap between the rich and poor. The rich don't feel secure. You know, who wants to have to build a 6-foot high barbed wire fence and have a guy with a machine gun out the front just so their kids don't get kidnapped on the way to school, you know? But that's how it is in Colombia, in a country where there is, or Venezuela, you know, in a country where there is tremendous wealth and poverty disparity. Or you have the problem of an aging population with no help because they haven't made it livable for young people. They haven't given them housing security, you know, good pay, childcare, assistance, you know, to make the next generation want to have kids and bring people into the world. And, you know, there's got to be mutual consultation. And then, you know, beings are vast. I vow to save them. So understanding my well-being is your well-being. Our well-being is you know, happiness isn't just a personal matter, it's a communal matter. Like we know that the most crucial time to intervene so that people don't become a burden on society later on is early childhood. To to take a child out of a situation where it's being abused. But the problem is sometimes, because of desperation, because the system's so overburdened, sometimes foster families aren't properly vetted as well. So there's, it's just really complex. And then, as part of these 4 great vows, the 6 perfections of wisdom, of that bodhisattvas practice, such as transcendent generosity, transcendent discipline, transcendent patience, transcendent diligence, transcendent concentration, and transcendent wisdom. And they're called transcendent because they're done with the wisdom of emptiness, understanding there is no recipient, there is no gift being given, and there is no one giving. And that means that I am, as an agent of goodness, empty of my own permanent existence, but full of all of heaven and earth. So there is no emptiness without fullness. Yeah, because I don't have a permanent, unchanging self. I have a self which arises due to causes and conditions. And because my non-self elements go beyond this life, the causes and effects of my existence, there is a part of me that has never been born and will never die, because there was never a permanent, unchanging self. There never was a beginning of this being, because you look for the beginning and you can only see endless, endless, endless webs of interconnectedness. And that is what I meant by the circle instead of the line, the no beginning, no end. Yeah. If something never truly existed, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's a subtle point between nihilism and eternalism in the middle. I'm not saying I never existed or that I don't have a relative existence. I definitely have a relative existence, but it is impermanent and conditional. Because if it's like the rug, you take out one thread and the whole thing falls apart. If my heart stops, somehow or if I break my back, in a significant way that ends my life, or if there's no more water, three days with no water, no more me, right? So yeah, if there is a significant drought like happened in Ethiopia in the 80s, no more people, no more food. So one of those crucial elements, then my elements change and I turn into something else. So the first of the 6 perfections, in Theravada, it's the 10 perfections, and they're basically the same. It's just like an accordion, like you expand it or you can make it concise. There's 3 kinds of giving. There's material giving, which is pretty clear. You're giving aid, you're giving blankets, you're giving medicine, you're giving school uniforms, you're giving houses. There is giving dharma. It's like that old adage, teach a man to fish. You teach someone to take care of their own mind, and then then they can help themselves. You give a person a skill, a life skill, then they can, produce their own resources and contribute to society. Giving freedom from fear. So giving freedom from fear, so for those who use karma as an excuse to be apathetic, sorry, it's not dharma. Freedom from fear is protecting others' human rights. So if someone is fleeing from a dictatorship or a place where they don't have human rights, you're giving them protection. Yeah, you're protecting their safety and well-being. But it's also the fear of realizing that you're not as solid as you thought, and that all the ideas you have about yourself, the fixations and mental cloud of formations we live under that we call ourselves, is a complete illusion. And that is scary to realize. Like, I think people who get a terminal disease diagnosis, it's a bit of a shock to realize wow, I could just cease to be, and I don't know when. You know, we have this idea, yeah, I should make it till 80, 75, I should at least. But there's just no guarantee. You know, like when our friend, there was one lady, I believe, in Deloraine, she was in a car accident, and she was just standing on the side of the car and she got run over. And she was in her 40s or 30s, I think, you know, and she was so loved by the community. There's just no guarantee. She was a mother, you know, but just because you're a parent or you've got money in the bank or everybody loves you, there's no guarantee that you will. Yeah, and I have a friend, his wife died in her early 60s, you know, he's in his 70s, and you would think because she was 10 years younger that she would be the one taking care of him or outliving him, but he was the one taking care of her, you know, he outlived her. So you just never know, and you can't take it for granted. Anyway, giving protection from fear can mean so many things, but yeah, mostly the fear of realizing emptiness, you know, the fear of realizing the unbearable lightness of being. It can be a wonderful thing, but it can also be a scary thing, you know, when you just realize, because we do tend to get in these routines of stagnant thinking and how we view the world and our opinions and our place in the world, you know, and that's why it's nice sometimes to travel and shake it up, you know, and just you just go to another country and you realize our culture is completely man-made. It's not the only way to be. It's not the only way to see the world, you know, and you realize even the way people view gender, the way people view the role of a woman in India is very different to the way they view the role of a woman in, say, Sweden. You know, that all of these things are created from the mind, you know. So to not be too rigid about the way you think and how you view yourself and how you view your relationship with others, you know. That's a nice thing, actually, that our traumatized patterns could change, but that takes a lot of work and you know, a lot of noticing. So the second kind of giving is transcendent discipline, which means avoiding negative actions like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, harsh speech, divisive speech, slander, lying, taking drugs or alcohol to you know, and there's varying degrees of that. Like some people, they like a glass of red, you know, and there's probably not a lot of harm in that, but it's when you can say when you've had too much, you know, when you start to gossip and you start to, like, you've lost your mindfulness, you know. Yeah, or you're harming your body, you know, because people drink too much. That's quite big in Australia, that people drink a lot, and they drink for the wrong reasons. They drink because there's something they don't want to feel, you know, or there's a tension. The way they're living produces a lot of stress and tension and is out of balance. They're working too much, and rather than addressing that imbalance, they drink a lot so they can just forget the tension of their lives, the fact that they're working too much, the fact that their life is out of balance, you know, or that they have some relational problem in their marriage that they need to address. It's hard to have proper communication when you're never sober enough to have the talk you need to have about your marriage, you know, or the unmet needs. Instead, we, you know, drink away the pain. Like there are literally men that would rather die than admit that they're in pain or that they're vulnerable or that they don't know something or that they need help. You know, it's actually really tragic that's how we raise boys, you know. Then undertaking positive actions, so the opposite of that. And it's in Buddhism, we never say thou shalt not, or, you know, you're damned for that. We just say we undertake the training. So I'm going to try to drink less. I'm going to try to be more vulnerable. I'm going to try to be kind. I may fail, but I'm going to try. And every day is a new day, you know. So I try again. I try to live with more mindfulness, more awareness of body, speech, and mind. And especially Zen has a very unconventional approach to morality. Like, I'm sure you know the story of, there were two monks by a river, and it was like really deep water. And there was a woman who came by, and the water was flowing very fast, and it was quite deep. So one of the monks carried the woman across the river. And in those days, as now in most Buddhist countries, monks were celibate, and monks are not supposed to touch a woman, and a nun is not supposed to touch a man. So it was very unconventional for a monk to carry a woman across the water. And so the monk carried the woman across the water because she wasn't safe. She was very petite, and it was fast flowing, cold. And he carried her to the other side and said bye. And she walked on. And the other monk was like shocked. He said, "How could you? We're not supposed to have anything to do with women. We're not supposed to touch women. How could you do that? You know, that's a breakage of our vows." And the first Zen monk who carried the woman said, "You're still carrying that woman. I let her go at the other side of the river." You know.